thing is Google's had like an incredible AI competency, particularly since they bought DeepMind. And it's been predominantly oriented towards kind of, internal problems. They demonstrated last year that their AI improved data center energy efficiency by 40%. They've used it for ad optimization, ad copy optimization, the YouTube follow video algorithm. So what video is suggested to you as your next video to watch, which massively increased YouTube hours watched per user, which massively increased YouTube revenue. What's the right time and place to insert videos in YouTube or insert ads in YouTube videos. So, autofill in Gmail and Docs. So much of this competency has been oriented specifically to avoid this primary disruption in search. That I think is worth noting, I did a back of the envelope analysis on the cost of doing this compared to ChatGPT. So Google makes about $3 per click. You can back into what their revenue per search is a bunch of different ways. One way is $3 per click, about a 3% click-through rate on ads. Some people estimate, this is about right, about 5 cents to 10 cents revenue per search done on Google, or anywhere from 1 cent to 10 cents, let's say.
Even if they don't click the ads, because 1 out of 100 people click an ad, and that's where the money comes from.
So let's just call it 5 cents, right? And you can assume a roughly 50% margin on that search, which means a 50% COGS or cost of goods or a cost to run that search and present those ads. So, right now, Google search costs them about, call it 2.5 cents per search to present the results. A recent estimate on running the GPT-3 model for ChatGPT is that each result takes about 30 cents of compute. So it's about an order of magnitude higher cost to run that search result than it is to do it through a traditional search query.
Today.
Which makes today. That's right. And so that's the point. Like, it has to come down by about an order of magnitude. Now, this then becomes a very deep technical discussion that I'm certainly not the expert, but there are a lot of great experts and there's great blogs and Substacks on this, on what's it going to take to get there, to get a 10x reduction in cost on running these models. And there's a lot related to kind of optimization on how you run them on a compute platform, the type of compute hardware that's being used, all the way down to the chips that are being used. So there's still quite a lot of work to go before this becomes truly economically competitive with Google. And that really matters, because if you get to the scale of Google, you're talking about spending $8 to $20 billion a quarter just to run search results and display them. And so for ChatGPT type solutions on Bing or elsewhere to scale and to use that as the modality, you're talking about something that today would cost $80 billion a quarter to run from a compute perspective if you were to do this across all search queries. So it's certainly going to be a total game changer for a subset of search queries. But to make it economically work for these businesses, whether it's Bing or Google or others, there's a lot of work. This was a big part of the innovator's dilemma that Google faced, which was, number one, it could be disruptive to the core business. Number two, it exposes them to regulatory scrutiny. And number three is, if they make mistakes, they're going to get more scrutinized than some, rinky-dinky startup where everyone's so forgiving. But it's great to see, look, I mean, as a shareholder, it's great to see them take this risk. It's great to see them put this out there. They've now released robust coding capabilities. They've integrated scientific research papers. Obviously, they're going to continue to improve model performance, improve integration with these data feeds. And they have a very large headcount, I think north of 10,000 people working, 10,000 smart people. So if you can organize those people and they've got this significantly advantaged infrastructure, they have a real shot at being a platform player here. The question later is going to be, how much is this going to disrupt core search revenue? What categories of search revenue are going to get disrupted? And, are they going to make that up in other ways? And I think time will tell there. But I think this is the progress that shareholders and investors were looking to see with respect to the product competition in AI. And certainly some shareholders still want to see continued improvements on the cost structure of the business, but that's a separate topic. But this was exactly, I think, it really hit the bullseye on what people business, really there's, three businesses inside of Google. There's, search and ads, there's YouTube, and there's cloud, and the rest of it is kind of noise. And to give you a sense of how big these businesses are, right? YouTube did 10 billion a quarter, roughly. Cloud did 10 billion a quarter. They have this devices business and subscriptions business does about 10 billion a quarter. And then search does about 50 billion a quarter. And the margin on search is much higher than any of those other businesses. And so the search margin, the ad revenue on search is, probably 100% of the true operating profit of the business. So the real threat to Google is more, are they in a position to maintain their search monopoly or maintain the chunk of profits that drive the business under the threat of AI? Are they adapting? And less so about the anger around woke and DEI, because most of the investors I spoke with aren't angry about the woke DEI search engine. They're angry about the fact that such a blunder happened and that it indicates that Google may not be able to compete effectively and isn't organized to compete effectively in AI, just from a consumer competitiveness perspective. On this structural point, I kind of thought about this as when I started speaking to people internally about how this happened from a product perspective. It felt a lot like when you talk to a lawyer, as you guys know, you're making a business decision and there's some risk. I mean, think about Travis building Uber. And the lawyer will say, it is illegal. You need a medallion license to do what you're doing in the city. And Travis is like, well, you know what? I'm going to take that risk. Brian Chesky and Airbnb, he said, you know what? I'm going to take that risk. And the problem is that like a lawyer's job is to tell you what you can't do, to identify all the peril of your action. And then you as an executive or a business leader or a manager, your job is supposed to be to take that as one piece of input, one piece of data that you then make the informed business decision about what's the right way to build this product, what's the right way to build this company, and I'll take on some risk. And I think one of the challenges structurally inside of Google is that product leaders and other folks were never enabled to make the decision that there were these, as Sachs pointed out, kind of like policing type organizations that were allowed to come in and veto things. And the vetoing or make unilateral decisions, and those vetoing on whether it's weighting or some training data set or output, that ends up killing the opportunity for the smart business leader to say, that doesn't make sense. We can't.
This is a good thing.
I mean, if you want to bet against Google's deployment of capital into infrastructure because you'd rather have them give you cash for your shares today, you shouldn't own the stock. Someone else will buy it. I think Google wins in a lot of different ways. There's just so much to Google. There's the consumer business, which is a lot of stuff. There's also YouTube. There's also GCP. There's also this portfolio of other bets, which, by the way, includes 10% of SpaceX and a good chunk of Anthropic that they own and so on.
Waymo worth $100.
I think they just took $100 billion write-up on Anthropic in the quarter. So they had $100 billion mark-to-market on Anthropic just in one quarter. And they own a piece of all these businesses. So there's a lot to like about Google. But just on GCP, I think that there's probably no better suited enterprise layer than GCP to take advantage of capturing value with AI for that enterprise setting.
Why? Why is that?
I think you're just so much better because you have so much of your enterprise data, all your email, your drive, a lot of information that you would want to have AI have knowledge of and have AI have access to improve workplace productivity. And then they're model agnostic. I mean, you can run any model you want and you can run any workflow you want and you don't have to be tied in. A lot of other cloud service providers, cloud SaaS, they're kind of model dependent to run in a certain way. With Google, you can better tune your system how you want to tune it. And what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is they have the lowest cost infrastructure in the world to run other people's models as a service, like Elon did with Grok, with the Colossus.
Elon Web Services seems to be doing pretty great.
And look at the return Elon's making on the Colossus install. So I think if Google, in the worst case scenario, none of their application layer stuff works, none of their network effects work, and they don't have any good models, they're still going to have the world's best infrastructure they can print cash on for years if you believe in AI. So if you want to bet in AI, I think the best public market stock to own is Google. And by the way, you also get YouTube, you also get the consumer, you also get everything else. The multiple is kind of ridiculous right now.